maybe. Alexandra, I'm sorry, I need the book. So I also welcome you. Most of you are already friends and regular attendants, and the new ones will become friends. So I'm very happy that we are such a rich group. And after a little general introduction, I will ask you to introduce yourselves, because we are not so many and we should know each other. Now, what Melitis has said about this place, I love the spirit of this deer park, and I have experienced it last year, and I must say it is really something which we should strive for, because although it's a Buddhist place, but it says that it is there for the study of classical Indian wisdom traditions. And precisely Kashmir Shaivism is one of these great wisdom traditions, and it has been included, and I'm sure it will be also in future included in the programs of Deer Park. Now, the spirit of Deer Park is based on a spirit of openness and dialogue between the different traditions, and a combination of study and practice. So these are the things which I find ideal, because in the university you only study the texts or the philosophy, and in other retreat centers you only meditate. But here, to combine the two, that was always my method, and it's the traditional method, because all the traditional teachings have been passed on with text study and practice. So this we are continuing with the same method, and this dialogue and mutual learning of the different traditions. We have often stressed that these traditions, like Buddhism and different schools of Hindu philosophy, they were fighting with each other, and there was a lot of controversy and shastrat and so on. But actually, and we just recently had a seminar in Shimla of a very academic nature, if you study these traditions, they were mutually enriching each other. And by dialoguing and by learning from each other, or sharpening their tools by exchanging and learning, so that it was not a kind of competition or fighting as we have it today among fundamentalist trends in the different religions, but it was a process of mutual enrichment. And this is very much true of Kashmir Shaivism and Buddhism, because Abhinavagupta, the greatest exponent of Kashmir Shaivism, he learned from Jaina and Buddhist masters, and he quotes Dharmakirti with the greatest reverence, and he has taken over many things from Buddhist logic and then adapted it to his own system. So it was a process of mutual enrichment. And what is also fascinating is that it was not a one-sided traffic, because what especially the Tibetan Buddhists have taken over from Kashmir Shaivism are the tantric traditions. And we know also by the latest scholarship that many of the Shaiva tantras or agamas were translated into Tibetan and were incorporated into the Tibetan canon, and the practical aspects and the ritual and even the iconography and so many aspects of Shaiva tantras were accepted and incorporated into the Tibetan tradition, especially Vajrayana. So this process should continue here in this wonderful place, and not only that mutual enrichment, but also the fact that one tradition does not consider itself absolute. So, and this has created the greatest problems among tensions between religions and philosophies. And here we have a great example in Kashmir Shaivism how they have transcended the differences. And I tell you just one example, that is, there are different, those who know Hindi or Sanskrit, of course, achara. Achara means not only doctrine, it means practice. So the way of life. So there is a degree or a hierarchy of acharas which starts very realistically from lokachara. Lokachara means the worldly activity which everybody accepts in the society and so on. But then the next step in the Hindu tradition is Vedachara. So Vedachara means you accept the Vedic prescriptions and then the caste system and all the Dharma Shastra injunctions how to behave in the world and according to Dharma, family rules for family life, rituals, etc. Then the next step is Shaivachara. Now Shaivachara is the practice of Shaivism as you can say as a religion, but of course in the Advaita Shaiva tradition it is already oriented towards its own transcendence. Shaivachara can be also considered simply Shaivism, what we call Shaivism. But beyond Shaivachara is Advaitachara. And Shaivachara has to lead to Advaitachara. It means that the practice of non-duality. Non-duality is not just a theorem or a philosophical doctrine, but it is a way of practice. So how do you practice Advaita? It's very clearly explained in the texts that practicing Advaita means breaking the social conventions, which means caste system, gender difference, and all that. So Advaitachara means a kind of Advaita in practice, in practical life and between human beings and so on. But this is not the end. The last stage is Nirachara. Nirachara means beyond any prescription or any rules or anything which binds you in a religious universe. Even Advaita can become a bondage or a kind of doctrine to which you're sticking. But Nirachara, it goes beyond even Advaitachara. And we had this beautiful Utpaladeva, who was the greatest philosopher of Prativijñā, of the recognition, he has a beautiful verse to this effect. Where he says, but the translation may be not so good, 219. He speaks of different tantric traditions. We know that Dakshinachara means the right-wing tantric and the Varmachara, the left-wing tantrics and so on. So, may you be glorified, O Sharva, who are the essence of the right-handed path, who are the essence of the left-handed path, who claim every tradition and no tradition at all. Niracharaya te namaha. So praise be to you who have no binding to any tradition. So this is something, to have the courage to go beyond any fixed prescribed rules and regulations which we associate with. So he is the one who is behind every tradition, Sarvachara, and he is Nirachara. He is also beyond any tradition. So this is the spirit of this tradition is so vast and so universal That's what I find here in this place also, that to go beyond any fixed religious or spiritual traditions. And regarding different schools of philosophy, those who have done the Abhinavagupta in Varanasi in December, they may remember that there is a sutra which says that all the different schools of philosophy or religion, they are like roles played by the divine actor. So the divine actor, the absolute, he takes on different roles. And these roles, they may be Chavaka, they may be materialists, or they may be anything, they may be Buddhists, they may be Sankhya or Yoga, any tradition. But they are all roles played by the same absolute. So it's again, it's not that, clash, but that universality. But of course there is a double meaning, like in most of the things in Kashmir Shaivism. Bhumika means the role played by the actor, but Bhumika also means stages. So the stages of the spiritual life are also called Bhumika. So what that divine, that absolute, he not only assumes different roles as different philosophical systems, but he is also the one who assumes every stage of spiritual life. And it's so consoling, such a wonderful idea, because we are going through different stages. We may think that, we are stuck in some level and we are not making any advance and not advancing and so on. But he is there at every bhumika, at every level. So it's again this universal idea that every stage of spiritual life or development is also his aspect. So this is the bhumika. Bhumika means also, of course, levels of consciousness. And that in Buddhism you have also the Dasha Bhumika and so on. And it's so interesting, when you study the Hindu temple, there are Dasha Bhumika. There are 10 levels, 10 stages or stories, and the symbolism of the whole temple is to reach that pinnacle where the whole ascent ends and you enter into Supreme Akasha. So it's again the same symbolism of these 10 stages or 10 bhumikas. There may be less or more, but in the Buddhism we have 10 also, until you reach that stageless stage, that nirachara, or can you close that window? I find there's too much. No, I get a draft. I'm very sorry, but I'm so still suffering from my Shimla cold. So this is just by way of a general introduction and the general attitude which is behind this whole tradition. Now, one practical, let us first look at two practical things before I request you to introduce yourselves, and then we start with the text. One thing is the program. This is just because one program is hanging outside the Dara hall, one program is hanging at the office, and another one at the dining area. So you don't have each one a program in hand, but I think it's enough to orient yourself, and by the time we start you will be accustomed to the rhythm. So we start meditation at 6, and for those who are brave, they continue till 7:30. But the normal time, I expect everybody to sit for 1 hour. If you have any problem with meditation, then we can talk about it, or we can either personally or generally what you require. But I do expect you to sit for 1 hour, and those who cannot sit longer, I would request them to take an asana not so far from the door, because if you sit right in front and then you walk out while the others are still meditating, it will be disturbing. So those who are sitting longer, they can be closer to the altar, and the others. And you take one asana and stay with it for the whole week. It's better to not to go on changing it, create some kind of restlessness, oh, this fellow is now sitting on my seat, why should I now search for another one? So you choose one place today and then you stick to it. 7:30 is breakfast, and the meal timings are very early here. The usual Indian meal timings are very late, but you will get used to it. Then we have sufficient time for breakfast, or to go back to your room if you have to take bath or whatever. 9 to 10:30 is teaching. Then there is a tea break, and since the lunch is already at 12, we have another meditation from 11 to 12, because my ideal number of hours which we should reach possibly is 4 hours meditation daily. So those who are sitting only 1 hour instead of 1.5, of course they will get only 3 hours, but it depends on your capacity and your desire and your so one shouldn't force oneself if one is not able to sit through. So 12 is lunch, then again there's sufficient space before the next teaching. Next teaching is from 3 to 4:30. Then again tea break. And then we have put here meditative work. Now the meaning is that we are sitting the whole day, so we should have some movement, since in our tradition we don't have walking meditation like in Zen. And if it's not just raining heavily, we can do it either collectively or individually. But there are very nice walks around here. And last year we had Linda to guide us, but I'm sure we'll find somebody to guide us. I know some ways also, but I'm still a bit weak to walk too much. And I don't know, Venerable Agachita, whether you can find somebody to help us, one of the boys maybe. If you want to do it together, and that time in the afternoon is also a chance to talk. So while walking, we can also talk, because we have, again, we are making a resolve. Every time we make a resolve and we break it, to keep silence from dinner till lunch. So this time I will be more strict, and maybe some others will also support me in being strict, because it's so easy, we are all wonderful people and we are so much interested to know each other and to exchange our experience and so on. But this is not only a seminar, it's a retreat. So retreat means that we want to gain something for ourselves. And it's not only for ourselves, but the respect for the other, to be in that atmosphere of silence. See, speaking or breaking silence is very easy, very quick, and the moment you break silence, you lose that energy which is concentrated in the silence. So I would really request you this time to try to keep it, and do whatever you feel like talking, keep it for the afternoon. And either you can sit somewhere, you can go for a walk, or so that is, we have sufficient time. Well, maybe not so much time, but still. see, the 4:30 is tea break, 4:45 to 6 is written Meditative Work. So it depends on us, I mean, how quickly we drink our tea, how far we want to walk. I mean, we can be a little flexible in that. But in any case, after lunch, we can break the silence.
Instead of walking, can we do yoga?
Yes, of course. Of course. I mean, it's just to get some movement. So those who are yogis, like last year we had Samuel, he was spending hours in doing asanas here, perfect asanas. So you're most welcome, those who want to do yoga. Yeah. And, excuse me?
You will ask.
Uh-huh.
I thought let's decide the place also. Should we do it here in this hall, yoga?
For exercise, for yoga, yes. You have those mats, you can remove something or add something. It's quite flexible. Great yogi, another one. We have some great yogis here, so I know that. But on the other hand, to walk in nature is also very beautiful here. Now, since we have 9 days, I mean, this is a little, as we say, a little sweet, which we are keeping for those who are working very hard with the text. One day I would propose to go out, if the weather permits, to go really out for the whole day, or take some picnic, or as we did on Billing, you know, and so that we experience the nature here around also. Because 1 hour walk, it is just going and coming back. But if we go on the mountain, one has to organize it, but it would give us a little break and also satisfy us, you know, that we have been in this wonderful landscape and we have experienced that. So Billing is that one mountain where I know where one can go, but maybe other. We'll get some advice from the locals. Okay, then evening again after dinner 6 o'clock, and 7:30 to 8:30 or 9 o'clock is the night meditation. So on the program is written the last hour, a half hour of meditation session is optional. So that's up to you to decide. Any question regarding the program? Maybe we have followed the same what we did last year, so it's a little bit of any other suggestion? Okay, then the second practical point are the books.
So, we don't use any bell to say this is time.
Well, if I'm given a bell or somebody else is given a bell, we can ring the bell so that.
We've used one just now, the bell outside the temple.
Yeah.
I've used it at 2:50 to basically say it's a time at 2.
Yeah.
So we can
If somebody can be in charge of doing that.
In the temple. Yeah.
Who offers himself? Oh, okay, thank you. You are our timekeeper.
So 15 minutes
Yes.
beforehand.
15 minutes.
And a long solo to advertise.
But a certain number of.
3 times.
Silence.
Yeah. Yeah, bell would be helpful, yeah. Because people don't always look at their watch and all that.
Yeah.
So now, regarding books, who has the basic texts Spanda Kārikā? How many have it? How many? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Now, D.P. Singh has been kind enough to bring 5 copies of Spanda Kārikā from Delhi, which those who want to have, and only 4 are available because 1 is your own. So, first come, first served. 4 copies. Helen? Yes, and you tell them how much they have to pay, Kavita. And who else? No, I would suggest, I'm sorry, that 1 copy should be bought by the Deer Park Institute for their library, which then can be borrowed by any one of you. Because they don't have it, and they should, instead of ordering it again, during this course you can use it, but we will ask them to purchase one for the library. How much is one copy?
225.
Huh?
225. It's really the back.
225. It's really not costly. So you take one of your own, otherwise it will be gone. So I think one for Deer Park, and then you can borrow it from them, Shamaji. So Helen?
Maybe there are more people than the copies.
And those who don't have, you please share it with your neighbors, because copying the whole book, it's not possible. Acha, you don't have. Are you?
Yes,
See, I have. You have to.
Sit here.
I'll share
We'll
it.
share it.
I said, no,
Yeah. I mean, the trouble of sharing is that the print is so small. And
Sharing in the sense we have to have a copy in the hand while we are doing the course.
excuse me?
We have to have a copy in the hand while we are in the course.
Well, I mean, if you are a very good listener, then you don't need a copy. See what happened in the ancient times. There is a beautiful story among the folk tales from India by A.K. Ramanujan. The title is What Happens When You Really Listen. And it's a miracle which happens. So mostly people, see, it goes here and it goes out the other side. So if you have a book, at least, yes. But to listen is a great capacity. So I have other...
Mic is on.
Excuse me?
He needs a micro.
Oh,
On the top. Yeah.
no, I didn't put it on because it was not so important. Now, Isabel gets the French
Yeah, but
for the time being.
I'm not a...
Yeah, a spare copy?
French. And this, of course, I have only
Je
one.
parle,
Yeah, we talk after.
generally pas.
So these books, which are other texts of Kashmir Shaivism, they will be kept here for consultation or for reference. But please don't take them out of this room, because occasionally we may meet. You know, the first workshop on Kashmir Shaivism we had here, it was in the context of the paragliders. So, and the text was Paratrishika Vivarana. No, Paratrishika Logovritti. So a text by Abhinavagupta on the supreme goddess, Para. So I say, we are not paragliders, we are paragliders. Because we are gliding in the sky of consciousness, not in this external sky. So that's what we are trying to do. So maybe, thank you very much for your personal statements, and maybe I should say 2 words about myself. Not what everybody knows, but
No?
No, really.
Okay.
no, because
You can come near.
you can even bring your chair nearer. Yes. See, when it gets to text teaching, and then you can record that, I do not. So you come closer, yeah. Your ears are better than mine, I think. No, I have to add
Recording machine separate.
2 things everybody knows about me, I don't need to repeat. But because yesterday in the evening meditation I mentioned that my first guru passed away 2 days ago, so maybe I should say something. Because we are going, the very first shloka we are learning is to praise the guru. So what does it mean? Abhinavagupta says also in the Tantra Loka and in the Tantra Sara that one can have several gurus depending on one's spiritual progress. And but one should never leave behind a perfect guru, perfect master, but one should proceed to the more perfect one. So in that sense, I want to pay my respect to my first guru or teacher, that is Raymond Panika, who passed away on 26th. 26th, that means day before yesterday. And yesterday, even if we heard His Holiness reciting the Mahamrityunjaya mantra to celebrate this passing to the Nirvana. Now why? I had 3 gurus, and Panika was the first to put me on the spiritual path. See, I had some experiences, everybody has experiences, and you don't know what to do with it and how to proceed and how to find a spiritual path. You don't even know what is a spiritual path, especially in the West. At least in India you have many more chances. And when I met Panika for the first time, he immediately understood what I was searching. And so he could help me in those first steps, to get into the spiritual path. And I can never forget my indebtedness to him. And of course he was not only a guide in that sense, but he was a great philosopher and a great pioneer in this meeting between cultures and religions. So he has played a very important role. Even in UNESCO, introducing the whole question of religion into the meeting of cultures. In UNESCO there was no place for religion. Can you imagine? How can you have culture without religion? And he was very decisive in this intercultural and interreligious meeting, and with very deep insights. And I worked with him for more than 25 years, and we brought out together one anthology of the Vedas, the Vedic experience, and so on. So he was in Benares, and I was working with him in Benares. And I am ever grateful to him. But the real greatness, I must say, if a teacher or a guru accepts that the disciple moves on to a higher level, it's not easy. And that, I must say, that was his greatness. Because when I became a disciple of Swami Lakshmanju, and I'm sure it was not so easy for him, but then I sent him the book, which is here, on Swami Lakshmanju, and then he acknowledged that he was great, and he also acknowledged that I had to move on. So this was his greatness. It's the greatest renunciation for a guru to renounce a disciple who goes further. And so I must say this was really great, his generosity and his openness, and not holding on. Most gurus, they hold on to their disciples and they don't want you to move further, to go beyond where you have reached in their presence. But if you find a perfect guru, nobody and nothing in the world can stop you. And so my second guru I didn't mention, it was Swami Abhishektananda, who passed away already in 1973. But so my gratitude, my acknowledgement to Panika is not only to his philosophical greatness, his great mind and everything, but this generosity to allow me to go beyond what he has shown me and to become a disciple of Swami Lakshmanju. And even he told me very sincerely, he said, you have found a treasure. So the treasure of Kashmir Shaivism. So he acknowledged it. And that is really greatness, real greatness. So that's my tribute to Panika. And the second thing which I want to explain, because you will find another name added to my name, Sharada, and I am getting Indian citizenship. And then there was a column, do you have any Indian name? So then I asked Prabhadevi, who is the disciple of Swami Lakshmanju, who is still surviving, I said, I cannot give myself a name, but you please think about it, and you ask Swamiji. And then she gave me that. So otherwise I was not, taking any initiative in that sense. But now I feel it is right. Prabha Devi, she is now 85, but she is mentally completely fresh. I mean, you call her and she will immediately quote from the Tantra Loka, from, she knows all the texts by heart, and tremendous mental and spiritual freshness. So we just pray that she will be with us for many more years, but at this age you can never know. So this was just a personal confession which I wanted to add, so that you understand this context. Now,
which is the name?
Prabha Devi?
No.
Sharada.
Sharada.
She gave me Sharada, yeah. So now we come to the text. Of course, those who have attended the Vijnana Bhairava is of course a text which is extremely practical. Although, I must say, none of the texts of Kashmir Shaivism is easy. Don't expect any text to be easy. I mean, you can maybe read Tantra Sara or, Yoga Sutra I cannot say, but there are certain texts which are relatively easy. You read them, you understand them. But Kashmir Shaiva texts are not easy. But Prabha Devi said very nicely, she said, the texts are not difficult, they are subtle. So it requires a subtle mind to understand them. And subtle means what? I always say that unless you have somewhere in your life, some spiritual experience, you cannot catch what is meant here. So some kind of spiritual experience is absolutely necessary to understand these texts. And if you have it, or you had it, you will recognize yourself, you will recognize your own experience in the text. That's why the texts are a kind of mirror in which we can see our own reflection. And as Devidatta said so beautifully, we don't have to pretend. We can be what we are. And this is the exact expression in Sanskrit, akritrima aham bhava. So the Vijnana Bhairava is of course very famous because of its practicality, but even if you remember, it's not an easy text. And of course we jump to, that if sneezing you get illumination even by sneezing and so on. But that comes first of all at the very end, and you have to go through a lot of experiences to reach that stage of consciousness where everything and anything becomes a cause of enlightenment. So it's not evident, that immediately you will enter into that state of consciousness. Now, just before locating the Spanda Kārikā in the tradition, I would like to follow our own tradition, and that is to start with the recitation of the Mangala Sloka. And I'm very sorry, I have been very sick, so my voice is very poor. And I hope those who have learned the shlokas, they will be strong support, because last year we had Raji with her strong voice. And this year I am relying on all of you to learn and to join in. Now, on this shlokas for recitation, it's the last one. So we have the Devanagari and we have the transliteration and the translation. So first I have to justify that I am starting our text from the end. And maybe some of you are tempted when you get a book in hand that you start from the end, the reading from the end. I am sometimes tempted. But here I have a very specific reason, because in the beginning of any teaching you have to pay respect to the Guru. And in some Kashmir Shaiva texts this Mangala or homage offered to the Guru comes in the beginning, and others it comes at the end. So even Abhinavagupta, at the very end of his great works, he gives a long list of all his teachers and even his parents, his relatives, his disciples also, not only his teachers. So that at the end. Now in the Spanda Kārikā, the Sloka paying homage to the Guru comes at the end. And we have to learn it in the beginning, because that is how we are going to start every session, either with this or with the very first verse of the text, to which we are coming tomorrow, because today it will be too much. So let us, who has learned this? Yeah. And Agada Samshayam Bodhi? Yes. Tipi?
Yeah.
So please forgive my very poor voice.
Can you see this?
On the top.
Is it on?
On the top. Yeah, yeah.
It is on.
This one? No, it does.
Agata Samshayam Bodhi Samutavanatārinim Vande Vichitratāpadam Chitrantam Guru Bharatim. It was not very correct, but let's try again. Agata Samshayam Bodhi Samutavanatārinim Vande Vichitratāpadam Chitrantam Guru Bharatim. Once again. Agata Samshayam Bodhi Samutavanatārinim Vande Vichitratāpadam Chitrantam Guru Bharatim. More of this. Now, the simple translation is, I pay my homage to that wonderful speech of my Guru, which is like a boat for crossing the fathomless ocean of doubt, and is full of words which yield wonderful meaning. Now, of course, it begins with the description of this bottomless ocean of doubt. Agada Samshayam Bodhi. Now this is the world in which we live. It is that world of doubt. Why is there so much violence? Why is there so much injustice? Why are the good people suffering, the bad people thrive? And so many questions, so many doubts, so many. And there is no remedy to these doubts but the word of the Guru. And so it's not the Guru who is praised here, but it is his word, Bharati, Guru Bharati. Because it is what the Guru communicates to the disciple, which is the direct passing on of that power to overcome that ocean, fathomless ocean of doubt. So there is no other way. There is no other way. We had a discussion in Shimla on the Guru Parampara. Why is it necessary that you need to be in a Guru Parampara and so on? So my answer was because this wisdom or this knowledge has to be personal. And personal is only when it is transferred from the Guru to the disciple. And that has been how the Indian tradition has been going on since ages immemorial, that it is always a personal transmission. And when some Western scholars they say, oh, Indian philosophy is all apersonal, there's nothing personal, I say it's just the opposite. Because the personal transmission is the key, like Swami Lakshman says, it's a master key with which you can open so many doors. The doors of understanding, and of understanding your own self. And when it says Vichitrata Padam Chitram Dan Guru Bharatim, the word of the Guru, which is full of wonderful or manifold meanings. So manifold meanings doesn't mean like you open the dictionary and you have one word and you have so many meanings. It's not like that. But if you receive a word of the Guru, it has so many layers of meaning. And these layers of meaning you will discover in your life experience. Like, for example, you receive a word from the Guru. It may sound very simple. And at that moment, it touches you at a certain point of your experience. Maybe years later, the same word will come back and will, oh, that is what it meant. Because it has the power. That Guru Bharati, it has that power of yielding so many layers of meaning, so many layers of consciousness. So it's not the dictionary meanings which are meant here, but the meanings which are applied in different situations of life, different situations of your spiritual path. Suddenly the same word comes to you, and the real masters, they don't say much. They don't, it's not a question of giving a long sermon, but just one word or one sentence or half a sentence, and it will touch you at the depths of your heart. And maybe some years later you will know, yes, that it has some other layer of meaning, some other layer of consciousness. So that is what is meant here. Otherwise, how can you cross the fathomless ocean of doubt? It's not just so many meanings. Of course, we know Sanskrit has always so many meanings, but it's not that. So this is one of the Mangala Shlokas of the Spanda Kārikā, which we are going to repeat and hopefully to learn a little better. The tune is not the Kashmiri tune, so that's why it has been composed by a friend of us. But the Kashmiri tune, we will use it for the first Mangala, which we are going to take up tomorrow, because it's such a deep verse that Ksemarāja has written a whole commentary only on one verse, Spanda Sandoha. So we'll explain that tomorrow. No, but before we conclude today, I want at least to say something about because some are quite knowledgeable about Kashmir Shaivism, others are relatively new, so maybe I should say something about the placement and the importance of the text we are going to study. First of all, in the whole of Indian philosophy, philosophical traditions, there is only one school which deals with the dynamism of consciousness, Spanda. And because it is so unique, this concept has been taken over by so many other schools and any other philosophies, and especially in interpreting the Tantras, of course, because Kashmir Shaivism has provided a key to Tantric exegesis, not only of Shaivism, but of Shaktism, of Vaishnavism, of even of Buddhism. And that key is partly, one of the keys is the doctrine of Spanda, of the dynamism of consciousness. And so we are going to go deeper into this whole doctrine. Well, doctrine is not a nice translation, but Mark Tychkovsky, who has done the greatest study on Spanda, he has called it the doctrine of vibration. But we will find some other ways of translating Spanda Tattva. Now, to start from it's always nice to start with a legend. In the 9th century, there was a sage, Vasugupta, living on a mountain, Mahadeva mountain, and even now in Kashmir. It's called Mahadeva Mountain even by the Muslims. And it's a great mountain, and it's still my desire to make a pilgrimage there. And he was an ascetic, a rishi or whatever you call it, Siddha. He was a Siddha. And his name also means the hidden treasure. And that they are playing also with the meaning of this name, that of the hidden treasure. Now he was so eager to have the experience of Shiva, and one night Shiva appeared to him in a dream, and he directed him. He said, I am going to give you a revelation, but you have to go to a certain rock at the bottom of Mahadeva Mountain. So there's still some controversy, but I think most of the Kashmiris agree that it's that rock. And Swami Lakshmanju, he's sitting on that rock. So he confirmed that, which is called Shankapal today also in Kashmir. So he went, and the story is told, there is not a late tradition, but the story is told by Ksemarāja, who was the direct disciple of Abhinavagupta in the 11th century. And he tells it both in his commentary on the Shiva Sutra as well as on the Spanda Kārikā. And 11th century, you see that it must be a very authentic tradition which has come down to Ksemarāja. And then the next morning, Vasugupta went in search of that rock. We have these stories, of the shamans, in searching for a place of power, and he was attracted by that rock, and he went. And it's a huge rock. And he touched it, and it turned around, and on the backside were written the Shiva Sutras. And so he memorized the Shiva Sutras, and then when he touched the rock, it turned again upside down, and they were invisible. They became invisible. It's a very typical story of a revelation, how a tradition becomes revealed. It's a combination between the human and the divine. So it's not, if Vasugupta didn't have so much of, was not such a great ascetic and seeker, then he wouldn't have had a dream, and he wouldn't have found that rock. But on the other hand, it's the divine initiative. So the combination of the human and the divine is very typical in that legend of the discovery of the Shiva Sutras. Now, Shiva Sutras are, so to say, the first text of Kashmir Shaivism, which is not a tantra, because the tantras are common revelation which are accepted by all Shaivites. But the Shiva Sutras are the beginning of even the philosophy and, I would say, the mysticism of Kashmir Shaivism. Now, the sutras, you know that in any Indian tradition, it may be also Buddhist or yoga or anything, the first text is a sutra. It's the briefest and most condensed, most difficult to understand, because it needs a commentary or it needs a living tradition to interpret it. And then, of course, we have so many commentaries on the Shiva Sutras. But Vasugupta himself, according to some, there are other traditions which say that it is his disciple Kalata, he felt that the sutras are too terse and it needs a little more expansion of the content of the sutras, so he wrote the Spanda Kārikā. But Ksemarāja is of the opinion that it is Vasugupta himself who composed the Spanda Kārikā, but other commentators say it was his disciple Kalata, who was also a great ascetic and a great thinker, because he is quoted again and again, and he has also composed a very brief commentary on the Spanda Kārikā. Now, Kārikā means, when those who know a little Sanskrit, it means one stanza, but since the Kārikas are also so condensed and so essential, they are often also called sutra, Spanda Sutra, by some other, even by Ksemarāja himself. means that the sutra is always the essence, the most condensed form of expressing any truth. And of course there are so many interpretations of the meaning of sutra, and I don't want to bother you with too much of Sanskrit, although it's very fascinating. So sutra is a little bit like Sara, but even more so. It's the essence contained in a very brief statement. So after the Shiva Sutra, it is the Spanda Kārikā is the next important text in the tradition of Kashmir Shaivism. And significantly, it has this very central theme of Spanda, which we are coming again and again. The whole week will be spent trying to fathom what is this Spanda. So the whole idea of the dynamism of consciousness and of the divine energies, of course it's all connected also with the Shakti, with the Shaktis, and that we'll see tomorrow with the first verse of the entire text, which is the Mangala Sloka, is very much connected with Shakti. So it is a very, very basic text in the whole tradition, but as some also, in the tradition, it's also said that there are different schools which altogether, when the term Kashmir Shaivism is a modern term, it is not traditional at all, but the different schools or traditions which together form what we call Kashmir Shaivism, of which Spanda is one. Then we have the Krama, we have the Kula, we have the Prativijñā, which is of course the philosophy, and we have the Trika. So I'm not going into all this, it will be confusing, but those who already have some idea at least to put these things together. So Spanda is in that sense one school of Kashmir Shaivism which is integrated with the other schools, and some of which are of course tantric traditions like Kula, Kaula, Krama, different tantric traditions, Shakta also. But the Spanda school is very, very basic and very important. But however, it's interesting that in the Shiva Sutras, which are the basic texts, the term Spanda does not occur. The basic philosophy is the same, but the term Spanda doesn't occur. So, all these texts have to be read very carefully, and why the term Spanda doesn't occur in the Shiva Sutras and so on. But Shiva Sutra would be a completely different topic for another seminar. Some people wanted to. But now, one advantage of teaching Spanda Kārikā is that the text is relatively short. It has only 50 verses. But then we have the commentary, because without commentary, again, we cannot understand. We will definitely complete these 50 verses in this week or this 8-9 days. With the commentary we have to be selective, otherwise we cannot complete it. But definitely the verses we will complete with an abbreviation of the commentary. Now there are different commentaries, and the one which we are going to follow is by Ksemarāja, as I said, the disciple of Abhinavagupta. Now Mark Titskovsky, my colleague in Varanasi, who has done a thesis on Spanda, he has translated other commentaries in this book, the stanzas on vibration, so those who want to go very deep, who have time and to study that tradition, these other commentaries are translated by Mark. Now, what we have distributed is, for those who don't know Sanskrit, one is the translation only of the verses by Mark Tyczkowski, which is all in caps, that you have ordered these few pages. So this is the translation of the entire, all the verses by Mark Tyczkowski. So at least those who don't have a book, they can have, at least they can see the verses. And the other single sheet which we have distributed is the first Mangala Sloka, which we are going to take up tomorrow. No, and the shlokas for recitation, that we will learn them slowly, in spite of my bad voice, but somehow we'll, with all of your cooperation. Sorry. And these are very beautiful verses which can always be used even before meditation or before teaching, to get into that spirit of the non-dual Kashmir Shaivism. So one after another we will learn them. So as I said, we will follow the commentary by Ksemarāja, but Ksemarāja's commentary is also too long, so we will have to shorten it. And as I said also, so who knows really Sanskrit apart from Alexandra and who knows Sanskrit? You know some Sanskrit and you are a beginner, but still.
Little bit.
Who?
Little bit.
Yeah. No, because see that commentary by Ksemarāja on the very first shloka is called Spanda Kārikā, but it's translated also by Mark in this book, Senses of Vibration, and it's a very beautiful commentary. Yeah. So I'll refer to this also, as much as we can manage with the time, but we have to at least keep in mind that we want to complete the text, the Kārikas, within the limits of this 8 or 9 days. So I think as an introduction this should be enough, and then tomorrow we will go to the first verse, what is called Mangala Sloka in any Sanskrit text, is the verse which brings auspiciousness to the whole teaching, which invokes the divine, or it makes any undertaking auspicious, free from obstacles, and so on. So that's what we are going to do tomorrow. So for today we'll close. It's already over time a little bit. I hope they have kept some chai for us. And then, we'll have chai, and then at 6 o'clock is dinner.
Who is the publisher?
Publisher of what?
Indian publisher. Is it?
Now, this Shiva Sutras of Swami Lakshmanju, it's a foreign publication, but there's an Indian co-publisher, Munshi Ram Manohar Lal.
Munshi Ram?
Yes. So what I want to stress is that we are now free to talk anything. From dinner time, we'll enter into silence. 6 o'clock. So if you have any questions, personal or whatever, we can do it now.
Can we do some questions like that?